All right, everybody. Today we're diving into the mining space, and who better to have on the show than Marshall Koval, the CEO of Luminex Resources, which is a growing mineral exploration company focused in Ecuador. One can find Luminex on the OTC markets under the ticker symbol LUMIF. Marshall, thank you for joining us today. Firstly, I want to ask you about the environment for gold, silver, and some of the other metals like copper. I view the environment as strong right now. How do you see mining developments and exploration exploiting this price environment as we see for the years to come?
Hey, Matt. Well, thanks for having us today. Yeah, I agree with you on the strong macros right now in both, particularly the gold, silver, and the copper space. Obviously, lithium and some of the other critical metals are moving down a different path, and they've been strong too. But, I was asked last February or this February, what I thought would happen with the gold price. And at the time, it was about 1900. And I said I thought the floor would be around 1800 and it'd probably break over 2100. So I'm in the ballpark right now. It's a real tough thing to forecast metal prices,
Always,
as
yeah.
you know. And I felt a lot of that at that time, that the price was tied a lot to what the Fed was doing and the US dollar. And then you had a banking crisis in between, and you still got ongoing conflict in Ukraine with Russia. So I think as far as gold goes, we're in a strong place right now. And I think what's starting to happen is you're starting to see generalists looking into stocks. First, the producers. I'm on the board of Equinox Gold, and we've seen a nice run in our gold price. So they look at the majors, the mid-tier producers, then kind of come down the line to the developers, and the junior explorer developers are kind of at the bottom of that. We're starting to see price movement there. So I think that's strong, and you're seeing that both in the gold and the copper sector. So I would say, going forward through this year and into next year, I think we're in a good environment for share price appreciation within the gold and copper space.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions I wanted to, kind of jump into specifically, I agree. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's very difficult to predict these things forward, but having a range of where you view the company, of course, that's where you're trying to right the ship and make sure you're making the right economic decisions for the organization to be everlasting and going at least until you get some of these things online. I want to touch a little bit. You touched a little bit on some of the geopolitical risks, but do you think the increase in collaboration between some of the BRIC countries is bullish for the metals environment? And do you think that kind of puts more importance on diverse portfolio for people to invest in, like Ecuador or other major mining companies or countries like Mexico and Peru?
So with the different companies I'm involved in, we've got assets in all of those countries you just mentioned. But maybe let's start with Ecuador. I think when you look at Ecuador, and we have two companies in Ecuador, we have Lumina Gold, which has our Cangrejos project, which we're in the process of wrapping up a pre-feasibility study, and we'll have a news release out soon on the results of that study. That's a 17 million ounce gold deposit with about 2.5 billion pounds of copper in the resources. So if you look at Ecuador specifically, and then you throw in Condor and the other companies like Lundin Gold and Sol Gold and other companies that are operating there, that's one of the last underexplored jurisdictions in the world, certainly in Latin America, and it has the same geology as Peru and Chile and Colombia, that whole Andean region. So the potential for discovery is huge. I mean, when we acquired Cangrejos and Lumina Gold in 2004, it hadn't had a resource on it. When Newmont discovered it in late 90s, there was no resource, and we put together 17 million ounces. So discovery is real and tangible. You look at Warintza, that's another one. So I think as far as looking at Ecuador as part of a portfolio for investors, I think there's some good companies operating. If you want to go with a producer, I think you've got Lundin Gold, which has done really well and will continue to do well. And then if you look at developers, you've sort of got companies like Lumina Gold and Solaris and Sol Gold are companies that are developing. So that space is good. When you contrast it to, say, Peru and Mexico, those are more mature mining jurisdictions. They're good assets and there's investment opportunities there. But if you're looking at a political risk scenario in those three countries, you've got Mexico that recently looked at nationalizing or did nationalize some lithium assets, and Peru's had a lot of social unrest recently. Things are getting better in Peru. And Ecuador and both those countries have left-leaning governments. And Ecuador, with President Lasso right now, is center-right and backing the mining sector. So I think you have to look at Ecuador in the future, particularly if you have a longer-term view with gold and copper. And now back to the question of the BRICS. I think the BRICS, we operate in Equinox in Brazil. Brazil's a great jurisdiction as well. China's not going to go away. India and Russia. Russia produces a lot of different metals, a whole suite of pretty much everything. But you've got a lot of movement away from Russia purchasing in the Western world. You've got China backing a lot of the oil and metals buying out of Russia. So I think what it bodes real well for in the long run is globally is gold and copper for sure. You've got other metals that'll do well. So I think the emerging of the BRICS are going to play an important role going forward, no matter what.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it answers it perfectly. And I know in the investor presentation that you had, the March 23 investor presentation, you talked about specifically, how well Ecuador has done over the past 3 administrations to truly become more and more an investable region for, not only you guys, but others. And as you kind of alluded to, the central and right-leaning sort of administration currently is backing a lot of the mining that could be coming into Ecuador. And now I want to transfer more to your portfolio, Luminex's portfolio. Obviously, it's very much centered around Ecuador. You have an established PEA, or preliminary economic assessment, for your Condor North gold opportunity. That was done in 2021 by an independent assessment by an independent third party. Came back pretty prolific, 16% IRR at $1,600 gold, as you kind of alluded to. The price at the moment we're kind of seeing is $2,000. All-in sustaining costs less than $900 an ounce. So you continue to drill and delineate around that area since 2021, starting in 2022, and having other drilling opportunities around there where you've continued to delineate. Tell us the strategy around that development. Why haven't you had a final investment decision yet with something that I guess already seems like it's a pretty tangible project going forward? Just curious on the strategy from the man himself.
Yeah, well, those are real good observations. I think if you look at the macro aspect and what you just went through, there's still quite a bit of exploration potential there that we haven't fully realized. And I'll talk about Cuyes West, the discovery that we made and we're concentrating on now. But when you look at the PEA that was put in, the knock that we get in the market was the initial capital was high, about 600 million US to put it into production. The NPV and the IRR were decent at $1,600 gold. I think the NPV was about 387. But that project, and the way that we scoped it, was primarily focused on open pit targets that we had in the Condor North epithermal project area. And it had 25,000 ton per day throughput, of which 2,500 ton per day was from a higher grade underground camp deposit. And there were about 600,000 ounces of gold in the camp deposit. So the strategy in the PEA was to have 3 operating areas simultaneously: the camp underground, the Soledad, and the Cuyes open pit. And what we went back and made the discovery of this Cuyes West area, it's changed our thinking about the project. And we've got 26 holes into Cuyes West as we speak. We've released results on 22 of them, and about 14 of those holes hit plus 4 gram all the way up to 30 gram, with a lot of stuff in the 10 plus grams per ton over 4 to 25 meters. So that's the highest grade area that we've seen on the property. So it led us to think that, hey, maybe what we do here to deal with the knock on the high initial capital is we scope maybe a 4,000 ton per day underground operation with the camp zone and then this Cuyes West deposit. So we've got in our current drilling plans for this year 9,000 meters at Cuyes West, and we're about halfway into that program. So we have about 10 or 12 more holes. And to give you an idea, comparable to the camp zone. We had 39 holes to get the 600,000 ounce resource. So we're going to finish up this drilling here and kind of see where we sit. We'll do an internal resource estimate to sort of track it, but it's a much higher grade system than the camp zone, and it's only about 800 meters away. So the idea now is if we can get, say, 1.5 million ounces into a resource, that we would start out with the camp zone and Cuyes West simultaneously as an underground project, and then move into the open pit. Having said that, in the news release that we just put out, we had 3 holes that hit a 200-meter intersection of a breccia body that was totally undiscovered that run, over 1 gram per ton. That may feed into an open pit scenario, but back to your original question about why we didn't just carry on with the economics of what we had. We're just still in the discovery mode here. It's a highly mineralized area, and we're also drilling an area about 3.5 kilometers to the southeast of the camp zone. So Cuyes is sort of closer to the camp zone, but it's called Prometedor. And we've got about 7 holes into Prometedor now, and we're waiting assay results. And it has both open pit potential, but it also has similar geology to the camp zone, where you get these rhyolite breccias and the hanging wall is mineralized. So we've got a lot going, and we haven't even talked about our copper joint venture with Anglo American up at Pegasus, and they're in the field drilling large porphyry copper target as we speak. So we got a lot on the go.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems like, while you had a good project, you're also looking to spend a little bit of money up front to kind of understand, will the development costs go down for, per ounce basically, or all in sustaining costs go down as you kind of focus that capital expenditure by, just making sure you have the appropriate development scenario for the resource in place. But you did kind of transition to my next kind of thought. So you're in the midst of collaborating with Anglo American and Jogmec at Pegasus and Orquedias opportunities. Orquedias, thank you. And drilling is concluded in some instances, but you have yet to be completed. Obviously, there's an ongoing drilling program, as you alluded to. How are those opportunities looking?
So the JV with Jogmec, we're going to be back out in the field drilling again here later this year. We're just in the planning stage with them, and budgets are been going back and forth, and they're pretty close to being approved, and we'd start up there. So that's a project we're operating. The Anglo project at Pegasus, Anglo is operating, and then we're operating the Condor project, the northern epithermal area. One thing I didn't even mention on Condor, within the total Condor land package right now, there's about 6 million ounces of gold and about 500 million pounds of copper. There's a Santa Barbara deposit, which is south of the northern epithermal area, about, 15 kilometers or so, and it's a gold copper porphyry. We haven't even done any work on that here in the last few years. And if we see sustained copper and gold prices going forward over the next year, we'll take a look at that again and decide if we want to do some further work there. So we're pretty much all of the Ecuador assets within Luminex are gold and copper assets. And I think that positions us well for where the market is heading. And we just did a financing in February, so we have funding for the current projects that we've identified through the end of the year and into next year. So, we're going to keep on that focus and try to improve that Condor North area, and hopefully our partners come up with some good results as well. And then we have some additional property. We've got this Tarqui and Kimi assets or concessions that are right up near Mirador. And, we're looking for potential partners to come in and bring those projects along from an exploration perspective. BHP had Tarqui and they dropped it after they drilled a few holes, but they did hit decent porphyry systems, and the size of what they were looking for, it didn't meet their internal needs. But anyway, there's more exploration potential there, and we hope to bring a partner in.
Well, a big company like BHP, great, great for this, potentially for you guys to kind of come in, and it'd be a literally company maker potentially for you guys. So I completely understand the pickup for that. I guess my main question is, of the few other ones that you kind of alluded to, talking specifically about, let me grab my list here. The Cascas, Chalupa, Tarki, you kind of mentioned on Inquimi.
Yeah.
Which ones excite you the most? Because it looks like you have a long list of opportunities that are currently in development, but those ones are kind of just one pagers in your presentation. But those themselves look like they could be, massive opportunities going forward. But they're just in the pre-appraised stage at the moment. Which one fancies your eye right now?
Well, as far as putting money to work, I think we're going to continue to focus, on the Condor North. After that, if you look at those projects, I like both Tarki. I think there's copper potential there that hasn't been fully evaluated at this point. A lot of the drilling that was done by BHP was on very wide spacing, kilometer and a half, that sort of thing. They did a lot of good work with geophysics, so there's a legit target there. Cascas is interesting. We drilled some holes in that. There is still potential copper targets at Cascas, but there's a gold target at Cascas that hasn't been drilled yet. So I like that too as gold. When I look at our portfolio, I'm right near gold where I have a potential development project. So I'm going to probably spend money on gold there, but there's a decent gold and additional copper target at Cascas. So I would probably say Tarki and then Cascas out of the ones that you mentioned.
Okay. And one of the things that I overlooked asking you specifically about is you have like a 98% ownership in Condor North. Is that by design, or is that eventually going to be farmed down at some point, or is that maybe waiting until you get to a point where you can, FID the project or put it off into its own development company?
I've been with Ross Beatty and the Lumina Group since 2004 through all the Lumina Group companies, Lumina Copper, Randfield, Strategic Resources in the vanadium space. We just announced a deal. We merged with BlackRock, and that deal just closed last week and just started trading a few days. So our whole approach has been both fiscally, on the shareholder side, pretty open to transacting deals that make sense, that bring the most value to our shareholders. We never fall in love with our projects so much that we won't look at maybe financial engineering, a merger or acquisition, that sort of stuff to advance it. So, if you look back at the group's history, we could spin out all the other assets. Actually, when I look back on it, all the assets that we've talked about today in Luminex and Cangrejos in Lumina Gold, all those were in Lumina Gold. And then as we advanced Cangrejos, we spun everything out into Luminex. And we're all set up the way we structured the company. We can spin out any one asset. We could spin out the Anglo assets if it made sense, and the others. But you also talked about the 98% ownership in Condor. And what that is when we acquired the Condor concessions, about 10% was owned by the Ecuadorian Army Pension Fund. And they own the remaining amount. And basically they've got diluted as we've invested more in the property. That's why there's that fraction of ownership. And they've been a good partner with us. We're in a border region with Peru, and they've been good.
Very good. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And I just want to give a quick overview of everything. I mean, we talked a lot about all the catalysts and milestones that are kind of upcoming. So I just want to take a quick look and see if there's any final things that you want to add. So you mentioned the 2.3 million ounces of gold indicated, 4.3 million ounces inferred in the Condor North area, established the PEA from 2021 and an underpinning by further gold targets and delineation since, and places like Kias West and other further prospects that you're drilling. You're seeing positive drilling results at Pegasus and Jogmec with for further results to kind of come and later in 2023. We touched a little bit about the other 34,000 hectares of land outside of the other opportunities that we kind of discussed at Cascas and Turkey, kind of coming to the top as potential for the future. And obviously, you touched a lot on the Lumina Group itself, best in class management in the exploration realm, 25% ownership across the management and Lumina Group for Luminex. So it seems like you guys are really well poised for the continuation of exploiting and in a positive way, of course, and exploring these resource opportunities in a pretty stable region that is underexplored, as you kind of mentioned very early on in our discussion. Is there anything that I missed, or anything that you want to highlight to anybody that has a potential to invest within Luminex, or for anybody that's looking in the region as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to tell you what you'll probably hear from every CEO out there. We're significantly undervalued in the market. If you look at where we're trading, we've got, I think, roughly about a 40 million Canadian market cap. We're trading about 30 cents a share right now. We're funded going forward. We've made good progress here. So we think as the gold market and the copper market continue to improve, there's a lot of upward mobility, for the share price within Luminex. So I encourage any potential interested investor to take a hard look at us. And that doesn't even count if we have a hit with Anglo American, who real good operator, good explorationist, what they're doing at Pegasus, or if we JV any of these other properties and have some good copper luck too. So I think, the only other thing we really didn't touch on is, metallurgy at Condor North. It's really good, real high recoveries, plus 90%. So, you're looking at conventional type processing and mining approach if we get to the point where we update the PEA. But we want to explore this thing. There's a lot more potential high grade and open pit potential there that we haven't even scratched the surface on. So I think in the long run, it's a discovery story, with a solid operating team that's been able to add a lot of value to shareholders over time. That's what we're out here to do.
That's really good. Well, once again, Marshall, I want to thank you for coming on and mostly educating us, but also talking about the views that you have on Luminex Resources and where they're going in the future. And hopefully we'll be able to have you on next time when you have some more drilling results for us in Condor North, or as Pegasus, or any of these other opportunities. You guys have your hands at a lot of different places. So really an upcoming story, and I'm hoping to see you next time.
Thanks a lot, Matt. I really appreciate your time and your listeners' interest. So, let's go gold and copper price and the rest of the metals.
Excellent.